Hello friends! So if you clicked on this video, you might be looking for some recommendations on AO3 for BTS fanfics. I'm making this video because there's not really a lot of YouTube videos out there talking about specifically this, except for Shades of Shantae. Just want to give a quick shout out to her because when I myself was looking for recommendations, I went on YouTube just because I was curious if anyone had uploaded anything, and no one did except for Shades of Shantae. And so after reading so many really good stories, I wanted to kind of do the same thing and recommend a few of my favorites, just in case there's people out there like me who wanted something new to read and didn't know where to go look for them, I guess. Some of them are kind of well-known stories and others are kind of more recent and, in my eyes, a little bit underrated. So I think that if I could at least give you one recommendation of a story that you haven't read yet, then that is great. Yeah, I think we should also just normalize it. Like, they're just stories, which leads me to my disclaimer. I know that there's some people who think that fanfiction is weird. My take on that is that this is just fiction. You know, it's not real life, it is just stories, and these are just characters within those stories. And another disclaimer, some of these stories do have smut, not all of them, but if you're not into that, respect it. It's okay. I'll let you know which ones you can still read or which ones have a lot of it that maybe it's not your type of story. And all of these are the members with each other. So I decided to divide all of these stories into different categories. We have the fluff category, we have the action category, we have fantasy-esque stories, and angst. So we're gonna start off with the fluff and more fluff category. These are the types of stories that give you little butterflies in your stomach or have you kick your feet under the blanket. These are those types of stories, which I love. It makes my heart so full. The first one we have, Don't Know What I'd Do Without You. It is so darn cute. It has no smut, it's only one shot. It is an AU where Yoongi, this is Yoongi and Jungkook, by the way, pairing. It's an AU where Yoongi works at Krispy Kreme and Jungkook is a regular. Jungkook may or may not be smitten. Okay, that's what it says on the description. I think specifically for this story, the author did such a good job with writing Yoongi's character. I feel like everything that he said within his character was so on brand. Like, I could totally just imagine Yoongi saying these types of things. Honestly, I want to reread this one so bad. I never see people talk about it, so I'm talking about it. If you want something short, something sweet, this is your story. Please go read it. By the way, all of the links to all of these stories will be in the description. My second recommendation is Stars Lost in the Sea by Smiles. I cannot express how much I love this story. It is a Seokjin and Yoongi pairing. This could also kind of fall under fantasy-esque, but it's more cute. This story is in 2018. Jin is a writer. He has writer's block. He decides to spend the summer by renting a cottage by the sea, okay? Also, in 1933, there's a lighthouse keeper whose name is Min Yoon-gi. Basically, they cross paths, and you're wondering, like, bro, you just said 2018 and 1933. How are they gonna cross paths? I'll just leave you with this little short snippet from the little summary here on AO3. There are some people who are meant to cross paths, even if it means time itself must bend to accommodate them. I cannot express how beautifully written also this story is. Recommend it 100%. I don't think it had any smut. Please go check it out. It's amazing. If you do read it, I highly recommend to listen to Okinawa, but that song is all I can think about whenever I read Stars Lost in the Sea. Next, there's some really hard hitters here under this category. It's called Cherub Vice by nonheather. And if you read the story, you know how good this is. This story is unlike any other story I've read in the subject matter. So this is a Jungkook and Seokjin pairing. It's mainly about self-discovery within religion. There's a tag that I think summarizes this story perfectly. It says, basically losing my religion but make it gay. So basically Jungkook is super religious, right? Christian. He goes door to door, you know, giving out pamphlets, trying to convert people that he calls lost souls into Christians. And along the way, he meets Seokjin, who isn't religious by any means, and Jungkook may or may not have a little epiphany. I love how this author wrote Jin's character. It's so free, like the nostalgia element, the self-discovery, all of that was so amazing, and it was beautifully written. I cannot express this enough. Look at me, I'm like becoming distressed just talking about the story. Just how she handled the character development, one, and just the way she writes is so like poetic. The things I read out of this story, like the amount of like times I just went, whoa, like that was so beautifully like written. How can someone think of the concept of love and write so like, it just made you feel it somehow. If you can't tell, I really like this story, and I highly recommend checking it out. After you read Cherub Vice and you still want more, don't worry, I have you covered, because nonheather, the same author, released Shellstar Tide and Bloom Odyssey, which are two little epilogue stories that go along with Cherub Vice. And then for my final recommendation on Fluff and More Fluff, we have the one and only Twitter AU I've ever read. It's called Dear My Friend by @the7print. And she also has an AO3 account, but I don't think Dear My Friend is on her AO3, but her AO3 is fics. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I read this on Twitter and I was going insane. This story is so cute, so adorable, has all the fluff in the world. No smut, by the way. This is a Yoonmin pairing, Jimin and Yoongi. This is a childhood friends to lovers story. They are pen pals, they write to each other. Jimin is from Busan, Yoongi's from Daegu, and they just exchange letters back and forth. But I promise, the story, I thought that it was just gonna end like a little one-shot moment. It was not a one-shot moment. It literally took you from when they were 8 years old to when they're like young adults. It's insane. There's so much more in there that I want to talk about, but I won't spoil it for you. Just go and read it for yourself. It is so good. Okay, so for our next category, we have action. I only have two stories under this category. The first one is very well known within the BTS sphere. Maybe you've already read it, maybe you haven't. Who knows? But I'll still recommend it anyway because it's so good. The first one is Ukiyo by Sharleena. I love this story. It is also under my favorite stories of all time. The amount of like world building that Sharleena did was insane. Like, it's crazy. This is another Yoonmin pairing, Yoongi and Jimin, and this is in an alternate universe where Yoongi is a drug lord and Jimin is a succubus. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. A lot of like violence, blood, disturbing themes. This one does have a lot of kind of smut, so check the tags to see if you're cool with that. But it is, again, this story is so beautifully written. I don't know how the author did it. Sharleena, you have a gift. The story is very unique and it's very popular for a reason. So I highly recommend, if you haven't already done so, go read Ukiyo. Your life will be changed, I promise. And for the last story under my action category, it's called Deadly Match by caughtinjimin. Another kind of like action-packed story, just because it does have a lot of like that like gang theme to it, I guess. The pairings are Jungkook and Jimin. I'm just gonna read you the summary because I don't think I could do a better job explaining it without any spoilers, of course. So it says here, when ruthless gang member Park Jimin finally gets the chance to obtain his belated revenge, he expects it to be easy. But he's proven wrong when part of the plan includes wrapping Jungkook around his finger, the son of his biggest enemy, and both of them end up more intertwined than necessary. Or Jimin and Jungkook hate each other until they don't and things get messy. This one has everything you could think of. It does have some fluff. It has some, definitely has some smut in there. So if you're not cool with that, read the tags because this one is kind of packed. Highly recommend it. I thought it was really great. For our next category, we have fantasy-esque. What I mean by fantasy-esque is that it has some type of like fantasy element into it. I only have 2 for this one as well. But honestly, this story had me so like glued to my phone. I could not stop reading it. It was so creative, just the way that the author, the way she did world building and her characters and everything was so original. I don't think I've ever read a story this creative, this like imaginative. I don't even know the word. It was so well written too. So much so that I think that the author is actually publishing this as a book. Obviously changing like the names of like the characters and stuff, but she's planning on making this a book and a series, and she actually has a Patreon. So in case you didn't know, or after reading the story you want to read more, she does have more sequels and like other parts to the, I don't even know the name. I haven't even said the name. It's Songbird in the Sea by Maya Archives. This story is Yoonmin again. There's so many great Yoonmin stories. So basically, Park Jimin, he is living on his island, and there's this thing between pirates and mariners. A lot of Pirates of the Caribbean vibes to it. Jimin's island gets attacked by pirates, and he has no other choice but then to go and do whatever they say, right? He boards the August, which is a ship captained by the infamous minyooff, Black Fox of the East. Next, on the final story under my fantasy-esque category is Petals and Ink by sugarandmint. This story was so cute. I almost wanted to put it under the fluff category, but it does have a lot of like fantasy-esque elements to it, so I thought it was a better fit under this category. It is once again Yoonmin. I swear I don't have a preference. I just like to read whatever's interesting, and I guess there's a lot of really good Yoonmin stories. So here, this is like a flower shop / tattoo AU with a little twist. Jimin owns a little flower shop, and he moves into this new street, and he meets a lot of new people, a lot of new friends, one of them being Yoongi, who is a tattoo artist. And that's all I'll say about that. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please go read it. Highly recommend it. For our final category, we have Angst. Who doesn't love Angst? I am a sucker for Angst. Some of these stories have way more angst than others. So for the first one, we have Taste of Ink by Sugamins. All I'm gonna say is be careful. This is not for the weak-hearted. I wanted a short little story to distract me from thinking about Songbird in the scene. I was like, wow, perfect. Taste of Ink. I've gotten recommended it a lot. Maybe it's a good story. It was a good story. However, it was so angsty. It was not like what I thought it was gonna be. And prior to this, I didn't read tags because I was scared of being spoiled. After this story, I was 100% sure that I would read tags for any story. So yeah, read the tags. It has quite a bit of violence in it. Jungkook is a drug runner for one part of Busan in one like sort of gang, right? And one day he bumps into a runner from a rival gang being Jimin. And Jimin has a friend, and that friend is Tae. And it's basically a Jungkook and Tae pair, but a lot of things go wrong. But if you want Angst, then go ahead. I'm sure that you're gonna love this one. Next, we have one of the most underrated stories ever, I think. This is also under my favorite fanfiction of all time. It's called Bliss Behind the Burn by pjungkook. It only has 13 chapters, which I'm like kind of stunned about because I remember reading it and each chapter was so long, which I love. And because of that, it allowed a bunch of character development to take place. So this is a Jungkook and Jimin pair. Part of the description here says, Jimin falls in love with Jungkook just to find out that he's in love with someone else. This right here is very coming of age. It does have heavy angst though. Don't be fooled. That's why it's under the angst category. Not all of it is angst, but a good portion of it is. I cried so much reading this story. The pining in this story is real, but the love story within it is so good, and I never see people talking about it. So I'm talking about it, and I'm letting you all know that this story is so good. Just a warning though, it does handle eating disorders, so if that's a trigger by any means, just read the tags. Highly recommend it. Love it. Can't talk about it enough. If any of you want to rant about any of these stories, please let me know. I am more than happy than to talk about it with you guys. Moving on to my next story, it's called I Bloomed For You by Meanie Beanie. So this story is very sad, which is why it's under the angst category. It is Jungkook and Taehyung, so V-Cook pairing. The concept surrounds the Hanahaki disease. It's about soulmates. So if your other soulmate doesn't reciprocate the love towards you back, then if it's not mutual, then you get the Hanahaki disease, which is coughing up flower petals that are in your lungs until you slowly die. Yeah, I know, it's tragic. And this story is very angsty. So if you find any of that interesting or appealing, I highly recommend it. A lot of misunderstandings, but if you like that sort of thing, then I'm sure that you're gonna love it. Next on our list, we have How to Disappear Completely by Zerorequiem. This story might be under the angst category, but it is so good. And it is actually under my favorite fanfiction of all time list. This is another V-Cook pairing. It's an AU where they're neighbors. Jungkook has agoraphobia and social anxiety, meaning that like he just struggles a lot with, talking to people and going outside. And because of that, he hasn't left his apartment in 2 years. That is until Taehyung comes in to his life and turns everything upside down. I highly recommend this one. As someone who has anxiety, I could relate so hard to some of the things that the author would describe or how they would write about anxiety, and the story was so good. It had me kicking my feet, it had all of that, but it did make me cry a lot. Not necessarily because it was like really sad, but it was just like, I don't know, certain things just hit different for some reason. So that's why I put it under the angst category, even if it's not as angsty as, let's say, I Bloomed for You, right? But regardless, I highly, highly recommend it. It also, like, certain scenes of the story, just like, I could picture it so easily in my head. And for the last story under angst and just in general that I have to recommend for you all, I don't think I've read any story like this one at all. It's called Honey by Mizarek. But it is about, again, V-Cook pairing, Jungkook, who has an odd, peculiar job. He goes to a sleep center in Seoul, which is like a new thing that Seoul decided to do to help people who can't fall asleep easily. They have a place where you could go and choose your sleeper, and it's someone who sleeps next to you or helps you go to sleep. And so Jungkook goes and he finds himself a sleeper, and at first it's so cute, it's so fluffy, but then it just takes a turn. And I'm not gonna spoil anything, but just read it for yourself. The vibes in this story were so unique. Think of it like Parasite a little bit. The vibes in Parasite, you think you know exactly where it's going, and then it kind of just like twists, and the vibe and the atmosphere is just completely different. There's a sequel to Honey. It made me think about Mr. Sandman, the song, in a completely different way. Highly recommend it if you're looking for something a little bit more unique, a little bit more like, I don't know, within the angsty vibe. So that's it for my recommendations. I was going to add one more, but unfortunately the author took it out of AO3. It was actually my first AO3 story that I read, like, ever. And it was called Illuminate. And it was a Jungkook and Jimin story. And it was really good. It had a lot of smut, but it was really good. It had a lot of plot and smut, I guess you could say. But yeah, the author took it out of AO3, and I'm not sure why, but I'm sure there's some people out there. I downloaded it myself, so if anyone is interested in reading it, just reach out and maybe I could send it somehow. It is about Jimin, who is not experienced in a lot of the, you know, sexual stuff, and Jungkook knows a lot about it, so he offers to help Jimin in that area, and they, you know, it's no strings attached. However, that never works out, does it? If that sounds interesting to you, let me know. Maybe I can help you out. But other than that, that is it for all of the stories that I am recommending to you guys. As for my favorite stories of all time from this list, in no particular order, Songbird in the Sea, Ukiyo, Bliss Behind the Burn, Stars Lost in the Sea, How to Disappear Completely, and Cherub Vice are my all-time favorite. So if any of you want to rant or give me recommendations for new stories that maybe you've read that you want to recommend to me, please do. I would love to see your recommendations in the comments down below. If any of you just want to reach out to me and rant, maybe you're in the middle of reading, I don't know, Ukiyo or Cherub Vice, please send me a message. I would love to rant with you. I have no one really to rant about these kinds of things, which is why I'm making this video. That is it for today. Thank you for listening to me ramble about these stories for so long. Hopefully you found at least one story that you're willing to read and that you love. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.